So, you've been earning Avios points and you want to use those to book those business class and first class flights that you've been dreaming of, but you can't actually find any availability to book the flight with points. This is a very common complaint that I see online, with lots of people saying it's near impossible, or even going so far as to call it a scam. Well, I've recently redeemed well over 500,000 Avios for a series of first class, business class, as well as a few economy flights for next year. Today, I'm going to talk you through everything that I do to find and book these flights without paying anything for any online portal or anything like that. So I'm going to start by going over a few key principles to follow that will make finding flights a lot easier. I'm then going to take you through all the practical steps to actually go and find the flights. And then lastly, I'll take you through the booking process and show you exactly how to do that, including if you've got any vouchers such as the BA Amex 2-for-1 vouchers or a Barclays upgrade voucher. So first up, those key principles. When it comes to finding Avios flights, you really have to be either organised or flexible. So let's start with being organised. All the different airlines that use Avios will release these flights at different times of the year. So if, for example, you're booking a flight with British Airways, these flights become available 355 days out from the time of the flight. So on all BA flights out of Heathrow or Gatwick, they guarantee a minimum of 8 economy seats, 2 premium economy seats, and 4 business class seats to be released 355 days out. So if you can't be flexible with the flights you're looking at, if you've got some fixed dates in mind that you need, or a very fixed destination where you only want to fly to that one place, you're going to have to be very organised and be ready 355 days out to book that. Now, you can do this online and the tickets will be available to book from midnight. A lot of people do recommend instead calling up, because sometimes by the time you've gone through the booking online, someone else has already called up and the agents on the phone can reserve those seats straight away before the booking's gone all the way through. So if you are really serious about getting that flight, you might want to call up. For me personally, I would always tend to just do it online. I've never had an issue doing that. But if I am doing that and it's really important to me, I would tend to stay up until after midnight to make sure that I can get booking that straight away. If you do wait till the next morning, depending on the location, it might be perfectly fine. There might still be that availability, but there is a chance you'll miss out. But of course, it's not just BA that you can book flights with Avios for. You can book flights with Avios with other One World airlines. So for example, you can still book with the likes of Iberia, Qatar, Finnair, American Airlines, and all of these different airlines release their seats at different times. Say instead of booking a flight with BA, you wanted to book one with Iberia, they released their flights 360 days out, so 5 days before BA. This is a lesson I learned the hard way earlier this year. I wanted to book a flight with Iberia. I went on to the BA website 355 days out to book it, which is when I thought it would be available, and all the flights had gone. And that's when I found out that they were released 5 days prior to that, but only if you went via the Iberia website or if you called up. There's no availability that show on the BA website before 355 days out, because you won't be able to search that far in advance. So if you do want to book with one of these other airlines that's releasing those tickets before that, you'll need to book directly with them. On a similar note, there are other airlines that release their tickets a lot later. So for example, American Airlines, they don't release theirs until 331 days out. So if you were wanting to book a flight, say from the UK over to the US, you might have missed the opportunity with BA. Maybe you've checked and their flights are already taken. Well, if you wait 3 weeks, maybe some availability will come up on American Airlines. A key thing to remember is that you can transfer your Avios between the different airlines that use Avios as their currency. So, for example, if you do, like me, earn most of your Avios in the BA account, you can still transfer that to an Iberia account, you can transfer it to a Qatar Airways account, and you can transfer it to a Finnair account. And it can be worth searching on all these different websites as well. So for example, I've mentioned American Airlines before. If you were going to book a flight with them, you'll see different availability on the Qatar website compared with what you'll see on the BA website. But yeah, if you don't see availability on one of them, it is sometimes worth searching on the other websites as well, just to see if there's availability there. Now, as I mentioned, you can be organised, but you can also be flexible. Let's talk about how that flexibility can help you to find those flights. So the first way is you can be flexible by not planning too far ahead. Whilst there is an advantage if you've got somewhere specific you want to go by booking it 355 days out or whatever it is for the airline you're using, airlines do also open up additional availability nearer to the time of the flight. So if, for example, a flight's been undersold, the airline might decide to release a few additional tickets for reward availability. This obviously won't work for everyone's circumstances, but if you do have some time coming up where you know you'll be able to go away, booking something last minute can sometimes work out for you. And on that note as well, just because you have already booked a flight doesn't mean you can't keep checking to see if additional availability is opened up. There have been times in the past where I might have booked a premium economy ticket just because that's all that was available on the reward flights, but checking nearer the time, some business class availability is opened up. All I need to do is call up, pay a change fee, and also the additional Avios and taxes required, but I would then be able to switch over to the business class ticket. Other ways you can be flexible with this to really help open up additional availability is to be flexible with the dates of travel, the airline you're flying with, the destination, and even the departure airport. Just because there's no availability from your preferred airport doesn't mean that there isn't some availability from an airport that you could easily and cheaply get to. For example, you might find there's no availability flying out of Heathrow for a flight, but there's plenty of availability from Gatwick. Or there might be some availability departing from somewhere within Europe, and you might be able to get yourself a cheap flight over to that airport to start the journey. I think it can also be really helpful to be flexible on your destination as well. Now, I know most people would tend to have a set place in mind that they want to go to, but for me, there's usually at least 5 or 6 different places that are in my mind that I really want to go to. And sometimes the way I might decide which one to go to first is just which one can I get reward flights for. If one of those destinations is going to be really hard to get to, I might delay that until I can find an affordable cash ticket or until reward availability happens to come up. But if in the meantime, I can very easily and cheaply get to somewhere else that I want to go, then I might switch my plans and go there instead. This is something I did a couple of times last year where I had some Avios I wanted to use. I had some BA Amex vouchers that were expiring for the 2-for-1. So I knew I wanted to use them at some point that year. And I was actually quite limited in the dates that I could go away. So rather than thinking of, okay, I want to go to this place on this date, can I get it? I instead thought, well, these are the dates that I know I can go. These are the dates I have to go. Where can I go on those dates? And I managed to find availability to Kenya, and I managed to find availability to India. So those were 2 trips I ended up doing. There were places I wanted to go anyway. I really wanted to go on safari for a while. I really wanted to go to India and see the Taj Mahal, do the whole Golden Triangle route. But both places weren't necessarily top of my list of places to go that year. But because I was able to find some cheap business class availability using points, I thought, yeah, why not go now? And then if you're in the opposite situation where you've got plenty of flexibility of when to go, but you're not flexible on where you go, you've got a specific place you want to get to, but you're not too fussed when exactly you go, then again, that'll open things up to you a lot. And particularly sometimes the specific dates, you might really want to fly out on a Saturday, but actually there might be loads of availability to fly on the Thursday instead, go out a couple of days early. But yeah, appreciate that's not the case for everyone. Not everyone's job will allow them to take time off whenever they want. If you've got kids, chances are you're only able to go away on those school holidays. So if you are in those situations, chances are you're just going to have to be more so on the organised side than the flexible side. Right, so now let's get into the detail of actually finding these flights. So we'll start off with the organised version because that's probably the simpler thing to show you. And then we'll go on to how you can find these flights if you're being a bit more flexible. So as we're doing this, I'm just going to share my screen, get this recording, and I'll walk you through what I would look at. Okay, so this is on the BA app. This is where I tend to go to first, but I'll also show you where you find this on the website. But on the BA app, I'm just going to go to standard Avios search, click go, and eventually it will take me through to the BA website. Now, even though it scanned my face there, for some reason, it will make me log in again. So we're now on the website and we're on book flights with Avios. So just to show you where to go to, if you're just on the main BA website, if you click on the menu bar at the side, you'll have under book, you'll have the option to book a flight with Avios. So you would just select that one and it would take you to this page that I'm on now. So yeah, if you have very specific flights in mind, very specific dates, you would just search them here. So let's say from Heathrow to New York. And then you pick the date you want to go for. So as I said, the further out you can book this possible, the better. But to be honest, New York's one of those routes where there's so many flights a day, chances are you're going to find some availability if you want to go to New York. So I'm going to pick a random date, go for business class for one adult, and hit search. Another thing to mention, obviously, is that you need availability for everyone in your party if you're making one of these bookings. The bigger your party is, the more difficult it's going to be to find them. So if you are a family of 4, naturally, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to find Avios flights, unfortunately. There we go. Okay, so it's loaded through. And this will then bring up the results of all the different flights available. So straight away, we've got one at 8:20 a.m. with 4 business class seats available still. There's another one at 9:55, at 11:10, at 11:40. Yeah, this is a route where you're always going to find plenty of business class availability. So once you've selected the flight you want, so let's say I want to do this one at 1:20 so that I can have a nice lunch in the lounge before I hop on the flight. I'll then select the business class one. It'll bring it through and it'll tell me how much I'm going to pay for that. So for this one, it's 90,000 Avios plus £187.50 in taxes and charges. So yeah, ideally, you've then found the flight you want and you can click through to book it. If you can't find the flight this way, you can maybe be a bit flexible. So you can change your details. Let's say there wasn't any on that day. I could try again for the next day, see if there's anything available and work my way through like that. So yeah, that is how you find an Avios flight if there's a specific date and a specific destination you want to do from a specific airport. So you know exactly which one you're going for. You just go through that search and book it. And to be honest, this is what I do a lot of the time if I'm finding flights. There's usually a set route I'm wanting to do, and I'll just have a look and see if there's availability. Worth noting as well, even though I'm on the BA website here, you can book with other airlines on this. So for example, I've used this website to book flights with Japan Airlines, with Qatar, Iberia. But if you're going to be really organised, what you're going to be doing is probably calling up at midnight as the tickets are released. So to do that, you're going to want to call your executive club number. So it is going to be a different phone number depending on your status level. So for example, there's a different phone number for people with gold status than there is for those with silver. To get the phone number, you can log into your executive club account and go to contact on there. You can also look these up online. I will just say though, if you're not a gold card member, there's no point calling the gold line. The first thing you have to do is put in your membership number before it puts you through to anyone. So no point dialing that if you're not a gold. So now let's talk about the more fun version, which is when you've got a bit of flexibility and you're going to be searching around a few places. Firstly, I will say I do sometimes just use the standard search, even when I've got flexibility. I probably waste a load of time doing this, but I will personally just, put in a few places, a few dates, try and search, see what comes up. Especially for me, there's usually specific dates that I can fly. Sometimes a bit more flexible on where I go, but there's a specific date that I have available. So for me, I might put in those dates and just try a few different destinations, see where I can get to. Especially that might be flying to somewhere nearby to where I want to get to. So I might want to get somewhere in Southeast Asia, but I don't mind where I start. So I'll just try a few different airports in Southeast Asia, see where there's availability to, and then I can fly out to that one. So if, for example, I'm booking with Qatar, I'll just do a standard search on the Qatar website, or I'll do it on the BA one and see what comes up. But there is a tool in the BA app that I do sometimes use. It's quite helpful, and that is the Reward Flight Finder. So I'm going to bring this up again on my phone, share my screen, and walk you through this one. Okay, so as it says, this is for when you are flexible with your plans. So we're clicking here and it gives you a few different options. So you can choose your departure airport. I'm going to leave that as London for now. So we're just looking at trips from London. I'm going to leave it in as dates anytime. And there's a few different ways you can do this. If there's a specific place you want to go to, you can get really specific. You can choose the specific city you want to fly to. You can choose the country. But if you just want to get out to a general region and then fly around from there, see a few places, you can just select the region. And this is a really great tool for me when I've got specific times a year I want to go away. Maybe there's a certain region I want to go to, but I don't mind too much where I go. So let's say I want to get to the Middle East and I want to fly in first class, but I don't mind where I am because once I'm over there, it'll be easy enough to get around from country to country, place to place. So I'm just going to select first class and I'm going to see where has availability for 2 adults at any time of year. I'm not fussed when I go. Let's just see what we've got. So on this screen, it'll tell you all the different countries you can go to and how many cities within that country BA fly to. So let's say, for example, I click into Bahrain. We can see there's a ton of availability here to fly to Bahrain. So 120 outbound flights and 116 inbound flights where there's first class availability for 2 people. So loads of different dates. You can have a scroll through and see if the dates that you're available would work out. Saudi Arabia, there's a few flights, not as many, but again, you can kind of see. One thing I like about this tool as well is it tends to show you when the availability starts to open up. So I mentioned before, obviously, if you're flexible and you leave things to the last minute, you might get more availability. We can see on here, just for the record, I'm filming this at the end of September, and I can see that, okay, there's something mid-November towards the end of November, but then the availability starts to dry up a bit. There's the odd thing here or there, and then quite a bit coming into Jan and Feb, and then nothing beyond that. So that might give you a rough idea of when they start to release these extra availability on those routes. Let's say instead there's a specific city you want to go to. Again, I'll use New York as an example. Again, looking at 2 adults in first class. Let's see when they've got availability. And let's say I want actually something specific. I'm going to try and find this for March. Do they have anything for me? So there's no availability for those dates. So it's going to show the first available instead. So nothing in March for me, but in April, they do have something. So I can fly it on the 16th, back on the 20th. There's actually quite a lot of return availability in April, May, tons and tons of return availability, not as much on the outbound. So even though I'm not booking this necessarily, it tells me that if New York is a destination I'm interested in flying first class to or from, I'm going to have much better opportunity flying back from New York in first class. So maybe I'll look to do business on the outbound and first class on the return. But yeah, I'd say that's a tool I play around with quite a lot. Not just when I'm looking for something in particular, but just to get a general idea of what routes tend to have more availability and when they tend to have more availability. That was actually how I ended up booking that India trip I mentioned earlier. I noticed that there was really consistently good availability for Delhi. No matter what time of year I was looking at, there always seemed to be quite a good amount going. So I knew that that was a place I would have a good chance of booking a business class flight. So things like that will just give you a good idea. And then there's 2 other things I wanted to mention that will give you additional availability. So the first of those is having gold status with BA. This opens up additional reward flights in economy. So sometimes when I've been searching through since I got my gold status, I will see a message at the top of the search that will say there's additional reward availability showing because of that status. They don't disclose how many additional seats are available. It just says there's generally some better availability. You also get access to something called Gold Priority Reward. And what that means is that if there is a ticket available to book in cash, even if there's no Avios availability, you can still book a seat on that flight with Avios. However, it will cost you double the normal rate of Avios. So in most cases, that's not worth doing. It used to be a lot better, but since BA have changed the structure of the taxes and charges and the number of Avios required for that, it's no longer really worthwhile too often. And then the other way that you can increase availability when searching is to have an Amex 2-for-1 voucher. So for example, with the Amex Premium Plus card, you get a 2-for-1 voucher that you can use for flights of any booking class. So you can use them on business class, you can use them on first class, premium economy or economy. I would recommend using them on business class or first class, but you can use them on any. And in addition to halving the number of Avios you're going to use on those flights, whether it's a solo one you're booking, or if it's something that you're booking with a partner or a friend, it will also increase the availability when you search. Again, BA haven't said exactly how this works. They've not said how many additional seats will be made available, but you will notice sometimes if you're searching with a voucher, it will show a message at the top of the screen showing there's additional availability that's been made for you. I think typically you tend to find that they only make it available when it's on those flights that have got a few more seats that are not sold. It's unlikely to happen on a really busy route, but it is a way of just opening up additional reward availability. But in order to see that availability, you actually have to have the voucher. And not just that, but you actually have to select the voucher when you're doing the search. So going back to that standard Avios search page that was on before, and I'll just bring it up now. So I don't currently have one of these vouchers. I'm a couple of thousand away from earning my next one. I've already spent one, so I don't have one to show you right now. But just above where we've got the from section here, if you've got a voucher, there'll be a tick box you can select to choose to apply the voucher. Now, don't worry about clicking this. It's not going to use it up just from doing the search. Just tick to apply it, and then it will use the voucher when you're doing the search. So when you've looked at a flight, it will show additional availability if there is some, and it will also show you the reduced cost of that ticket from the voucher. But make sure you've ticked that when you're doing the search, otherwise it won't show you the additional availability even if you have the voucher. So let's now show you how to actually make one of these bookings. Well, I've mentioned a few times during this video that you can actually call BA to make a booking as well. So if you are wanting to get that booking the day it becomes available and you're calling up, you can just tell them which flights you want and they'll sort it all for you. But if you are booking online, let me take you through those steps because there's a few different nuances to consider here. So first of all, you're going to come back to that book flights with Avios page on the BA website. If you've skipped ahead on the video and you didn't see this section earlier, just to show you where it is on the website, you're coming under book and you're going to book flight with Avios. Now, when you get on this page, you can type in where you're going from and to, the dates you want to look for, the class, and then you click search as was shown before. Important to remember here, if you've got one of those Amex 2-for-1 vouchers, that'll be displayed at the top of the page and you tick to use that. If, however, you've got a Barclaycard upgrade voucher, instead of searching on this page, you're going to want to come to Book and Upgrade. And then this is where your Barclaycard voucher will be displayed. So similar to where the Amex 2-for-1 voucher will be showing, above where you're searching from, there'll be a little tick box to select to use that voucher. Coming back to the main booking page, let's just enter in some details. So I'll use that reliable example of Heathrow to New York. Choose a few months out, one way. We're going to select business class and we'll go solo for this one. And yes, despite this page saying we won't be long, it will usually be quite a long wait. Okay, so this is the page we've shown a few times now, you're familiar with it. What you need to do now is click on the ticket you want. We're going to come down to click continue. Right, unhelpfully right now I don't have too many Avios in my account because, as I mentioned at the start, I've spent quite a lot of them recently. But from here you can see what would be displayed on the page. But yeah, because I don't actually have the sufficient Avios in the account, you'll notice here it's a bit greyed out, but you can see there's different amounts that you can pay. So you can choose to pay a lower amount of Avios and a higher amount of taxes and charges. Now, a lot of the time when you're doing this, it will mean that you're actually effectively buying Avios at quite a bad rate. It's not a terrible rate, but it's not the best. So it is worth just doing a bit of a calculation sometimes to just figure out if it is worth reducing the taxes and charges. Often on a European flight, for example, the default one they give you, the lowest amount of tax and charges, is actually a bit more costly than paying a bit more in the taxes and charges. I have done a whole other video that talks about this a bit more. So I'll not go into too much detail right now, but just something to be aware of when you are selecting it. Ultimately, from here, you would just select which Avios and cash combination you want to use, scroll on, double check your flight details are correct, and then from here, you would just click through to make the payment. Now, there are actually a few types of flights that you can't actually book online and you will have to call up for these. So the first is if you're booking a flight that uses multiple airlines. I've had this work sometimes, but generally speaking, the BA website, unless you're booking a cash ticket, it'll really struggle to price up when you're using multiple airlines. It'll often tell you the amount, but then it won't actually let you proceed through to books. So let's say, for example, you were flying out to the States, you had an initial flight out to New York, because why not use that as an example again? But then you were going to get a connecting American Airlines flight to, say, LA. Then you wouldn't be able to make that booking on the BA website. You would have to call them up to make that. If you are worried about missing out on that availability, you've seen the initial flight and you just want to get that locked in, you can do that. You can book that online. You can then call BA to add the connecting flight. Just worth noting, though, they will charge you a booking change fee of £35 if you do so. The only time they won't do that is if the connecting flight isn't available at the time you've made the online booking. So to give you an example, for myself personally, when I've booked flights home from the States, I would be flying into Heathrow, but then I would need a connecting flight from Heathrow up to my home in Newcastle. Now, if I book the flight back from the US on the day that becomes available, because it's an overnight flight, the flight then from Heathrow to Newcastle isn't available until the following day. But if I wait another day before I book it to do it all online, that seat might not be available anymore. So what I do in that situation is I book the initial flight into Heathrow, and then the next day I call up and ask BA to add the connecting flight. And because that wasn't available at the time I booked the initial one, there's no charge to do so. Okay, a couple of really crucial points that I somehow forgot to mention whilst recording this, but I've just noticed in the edit. The first is that this is the tactic that you should be using when you're booking a return flight as well. So don't wait until both of them are out and then try and book it. Just if as soon as the outbound one is available, get that booked either over the phone or online, get that booked straight away. Otherwise, if you wait 2 weeks for that return flight, it's not going to be available anymore. Then whenever your return flight is, whether it's a week later or a few days, wait till that next flight is available to book. And then at that point, you can call BA and add the return flight to the booking. Important to note as well, you don't have to return from the same airport. You can make open jaw bookings. So, I was talking before about flying out to Southeast Asia, wanting to fly into one airport, just based on where the availability was. If there was no availability to fly back from that same airport, I could just fly back from a different one. And this can be a useful thing to do in the States as well. You might want to travel around a bit whilst in America. You could fly into one state and fly back from the other. And you can do that on the exact same booking. You can also use things like the Amex companion voucher with this as well. Using that voucher, you can still fly into one place and fly back from the other with an open jaw ticket. But to do these kind of bookings, you are going to have to call BA. And then another type of booking that you can't do online, and actually it won't even show up in the search for these, is if you want to do more than one connection. So for example, I've got an upcoming flight to Bali. That involves flying from Heathrow down to London, and then from there I'm flying with Qatar Airways to Doha and then on to Bali. Now, because that's 2+ connections, it doesn't show availability when I search for this. So if I'm on the BA website or on Qatar Airways, if I search for that route, it'll tell me it doesn't exist basically. But I was able to call BA and make that booking. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of useful information on how to find flights, how to go through to book them. But I think it's also really important to consider whether or not you should actually use your points for a flight as well. It's not always worth using points. Sometimes you're not getting a great deal. Particularly if you're doing, for example, long haul economy, often the ticket can be more expensive when booking with points than it would be if you just book with cash. I have previously done a whole video on making sure that you get the best value for your points. So if you want to make sure you're not wasting your hard-earned Avios, watch this video next.